Hello, my name is Amelia Lyons. I'm a clinical supervisor at an Iron Bevan University Health Board, and I'm continuing on the journey of person-centred therapy here. And I'm looking at what Carl Rogers outlined as being a fully functioning person. I guess we all want to know that, don't we? What is a fully functioning person? Um, and of course, these things are always a work in progress and never a finished thing. So, Rogers talked about being accepting of the self. And what I mean by that is not some sort of complacent, I'm all right, Jack, uh, not some kind of self-satisfied thing, and not trying to force yourself into being something that you're not either, because you don't think you're good enough. Something about being accepting of oneself, warts and all. For example, if I accept that I've got certain problems, like I might have a drink problem, then I'm more likely to be open to go and do something about that than if I'm in denial about that issue. So the more I accept myself, paradoxically, the more likely I am to be able to then change. Something also about trusting in your experience. Again, that might sound a little gullible. What do you mean by trusting in? Are you not open to feedback? Are you not? What does that mean? Well, actually, it means really listening to yourself and your instincts about things. So, for example, somebody might walk into the room and you might find yourself suddenly feeling a little bit uncomfortable. And instead of just sort of muffling that down and don't be silly, don't be silly, actually sort of listening to yourself and saying, "Oh, I just noticed I've become more uncomfortable now, and I'm just wondering what that's about for me." Not necessarily choosing to share that, but just thinking about it, and noticing it, and giving it some value, that something's changed. So, what does it mean? Giving it room to be thought about. And again, that sort of process of self-awareness, if you like, being continued to the third bullet here, aware of your own experience without the need for denial or distortion. And again, what do I really mean by that? I might think, I don't deny or distort my experience. What are you on about? But I can certainly recall times when I have felt vulnerable in the past, or a bit anxious when I was a senior manager. I might feel a bit anxious, and when I get into a more anxious state, then I become a little bit more paranoid. And then I can start interpreting and messages in a kind of distorted manner. So I can get the simplest emails, and I might take that if I'm feeling quite anxious in a sort of fairly negative manner, read something negative into it that isn't there, and respond accordingly. And that is what I used to do when I got into anxious states. I think I made things a lot worse for myself because I was doing that. Really, what I didn't do was actually pay attention to that anxiety in the first place. Well, why am I feeling anxious? Let's have a look at that. Let's see if I can talk about that and talk it through with somebody so I can really understand what's going on there. Instead, I'd sort of push it aside to get on with my work, but then what would happen is it would affect my work, and I would see things in a way that they weren't meant, or in a slightly distorted manner. And again, in terms of interpreting experience accurately, again, you might think to yourself, of course, I can see what the truth is. I can see the truth from something that isn't the truth. But if you just think to yourself about maybe receiving a text, or you're sending a text and you sent it and you're waiting for a response and you're not getting a response, and the fantasies that might start up in the mind about, well, how far down in the pecking order am I at work that nobody's responding to my text? Or, um, you know, are you my friend or are you not my friend? Um, you know, Negative kind of tricky fantasies can sort of quite quickly fill up that sort of waiting space. And they might vary with each of us depending on where our anxieties tend to locate. But they might then begin to distort the accuracy of what's happening rather than just to sort of think, well, neutrally. There might be a variety of reasons for that. the lack of response to the text, such as they've left their phone in the car or something. So open to and curious about new experiences, then let's think about that. So we've got Maya Angelou there on the left. She was somebody who had a range of jobs and careers in her life. She was very open to new experiences, really gathered it all up and learnt loads from it. Became a very famous and beautiful writer and author and poet in the end, in the latter half of her life. And that was, at least partly informed by her ability to really be adventurous and learn from all her experiences and write about them humorously and spontaneously. And a perfect example, really, of that kind of openness that we're thinking about, and sharing her learning generously with the rest of us in terms of her readings and writings. Flexibility. Got a picture of Audrey Hepburn there, and she was somebody who was sort of well known for her generosity and her kindness. But also she was flexible. She was discovered as a sort of semi-starving person in the Netherlands just after the war, became a model and an actress, and then later on in her life she worked for the UN as a humanitarian sort of ambassador, and was very, very effective in that role as well. So, a perfect example really of that sort of flexibility as a person, but also a core of kindness and genuineness that was very clear in the way that she operated. Undefensive. Now, by undefensive, I don't mean undefended. It's perfectly healthy to have resistances about things and not to swallow things whole in general in life, but to be sort of discerning and discriminating about how we manage ourselves. So I'm thinking of a recent example where a friend of mine said I seemed quite manic at the moment. And I remember thinking, my head was like, manic? What do you mean manic? And I wanted to say, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But at the same time, I knew this was a very close friend who really loves me, and we're very close. And so I knew she wasn't just saying it to upset me or something, but it was just her experience at the time. So I had to sort of swallow that and think about it, and really look at that actually, because why was I upset about that comment anyway? What did it mean, and where was I? So it's actually quite helpful feedback. And but I noticed, how defensive that I felt about that, and had a little kind of fight with myself to sort of take that in, really. Open to feedback, and that could mean open to feedback from the environment and making realistic changes. I recall early in my career, I started to get better feedback for my counselling, which I was doing as a volunteer, than for my paid-for job, which was in market analysis. And I could see that. I thought, hang on, I'm getting better feedback over here than over there, so maybe I should be doing that as a career rather than this. So I listened to that feedback, and that was great that I did listen to that feedback, because that really opened up my career path in a very positive way. Living in harmony with others and experiencing the reward of mutual positive regard. I like this as a kind of a closing to this, really, because this kind of makes me think about relationships and noticing that there are lots of examples of people thinking they should carry on with people who they feel unhappy around. So somehow, rather than stepping out to find someone that they could be happy with, or somewhere they might feel happier, they stick with something that sort of has begun to bring them down. Now, I'm not saying don't go and look at your relationships and try and resolve issues, and sometimes relationships can become much stronger for doing that. I think sometimes, though, people may or may not do that, but somehow almost stay imprisoned in something that isn't really working for them, and that actually the fully functioning person lives with somebody and there is a mutual positive regard there, a rewarding relationship, and the best relationships bring out the best in each other. When I think about optimal psychological adjustment, complete congruence, I can think of no better person than Nelson Mandela, who went into prison, the struggle is my life, came out of prison, didn't come out embittered and angry in a really negative way. I'm sure he was angry in a righteous way, but he came out and he effected strong, lasting change because he kept his head. He was completely genuine and he was able to adjust to his circumstances. And as a result, was able to turn around South Africa, not on his own, and he always said that. There was a team with him and they all worked to the same, and had him as a figurehead. But nevertheless, you could see in the personality of the man that he was a congruent and adjusted, fully functioning individual. So Roger suggested that if our process of self-actualization continues, and if we're able to reverse some of the negative effects of conditional conditions of worth, conditional love, then we might get close to being a fully functioning person. Thank you.